Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look and installing the Carr Hoop II side steps on a 2020 Jeep Wrangler. Here we have them in the matte black powder coat finish, but they're also going to be available in polished aluminum. So really, if you want to custom cater the look to your Jeep, you do have those two options. One of the staples of the Wranglers is the high ground clearance that they have, and that's for that off-road capabilities, and that's what we have today on our Rubicon. It's fairly tall. For me, it's not too hard to get in, but the owner of this Jeep is right at about 5 foot, and that makes it pretty hard for her to get in and out as she's daily driving her Jeep. And this is going to be a great option to be able to easily step on here with a sure-footed grip and be able to get in the Jeep with no problem. Now, these are a great surface to step onto. Out the gate, they look really good. This matte black matches our rock guards on our Jeep today, so it almost gives it a nice factory look. It's nice and open. You can actually get a decent sized shoe in here. Even my feet are able to get into it, no problem. And when you do step down, it's got a really nice grip here. So it's a non-slip diamond tread. So that means even if it's wet or if you have mud on your shoes, there's quite a bit of grip here. That way your foot's not sliding as you're hopping in your Jeep. The step is made out of aluminum, so it's pretty lightweight, which is really nice when you're installing it, but also that means that it's going to be rust-proof and just durable to all the elements. So even if you go with that polished aluminum, you're not going to see any rust forming on this. That's kind of the pros of the aluminum. Now, as far as the brackets that mount up to the Jeep, these are custom fit and they fit really well. It makes it super easy for the installation. Those are going to be steel and zinc coated, which is also going to hold up to those elements long term. As far as the finished position when it's mounted, it's really nice because it puts your foot in a great position. You can still definitely get a shoe in here. And that comes down from being 10 inches. That extends this step out far enough. You're not having to fit your foot underneath the rocker panel too much. You also have a nice sized platform here. So it's 7 inches long. So that allows for a nice wide foot. It's also 3.5 inches, which is enough to get the front of your foot on here to be able to step in. And the drop that you're going to get is 5 inches, and that's going to make all the difference of when hopping into your Jeep. It also has a 500-pound capacity, so really any size driver can step on these with no problem. One drawback from these is going to be the fact that as far as off-road capabilities, this is going to lower that ground clearance by a decent amount. So from the ground to the bottom of our step, it's coming in right at 1 foot, whereas previous, at least to our rock guards, it was almost at 17.5. But again, if you're just daily driving your Jeep and you're not doing hardcore off-roading, this is going to be a great option. If you do plan on off-roading, just know that these are going to have the potential to hit things, and it's probably going to cause some damage to them. So it's definitely something you're going to want to keep in mind. When picking these up, they come in a quantity of 2, so not only will the driver be able to get in, but also the passengers. And overall, the installation on this is actually really easy. You are going to be doing some drilling. They're not using factory holes, which is totally fine, because once it's mounted up, it's extremely sturdy, and overall, it's not too hard to gain access to any of the spots that you're going to drill. I'll walk you through all the steps to make sure you get your steps installed, so let's take a look at that. Now, the first thing you're going to want to do to get your steps installed, if you have this factory rock guard, you're going to want to get that removed, and it will be able to go back up once you have the steps installed, but we're going to be drilling through the side pinch well to get this mounted up. So in order to do that, this needs to come down, and it's pretty easy to do. There's just 2 13mm bolts, and then we just have 4 10mm nuts. They're pretty easy to get to, so we'll go ahead and get this removed. And those 10mm nuts are just on both sides of the bracket where you took that 13mm off. So we'll just set this aside for now. Now in the instructions, they have a kind of recommended spot to put it, and they talk about moving this 10mm bolt and the hex that it goes into further up. I found that where they want it mounted is going to be a little bit too far forward. I think a good rule of thumb is if you open your door, you're going to kind of want the step to be mid-line with the front of the seat, and that's going to put it in a good position. Now we're going to assemble the brackets on our step just to kind of get it mocked up and mark out where we're going to be drilling. Something I'll point out is in the hardware, there's going to be excess hardware. I think it's kind of universal what they supply, so you won't be using everything, but there's going to be 2 bolts that are very close to one another. You're going to want the longer of the 2, so go ahead and grab 4 of those. And we're just going to mock these up again just to kind of space it out and mark where we're going to drill. So we're going to loosely put our hardware in place. So these just kind of slide over this portion. So kind of just put it at an angle and then we can get this aligned. I got a flat washer here. And then on the back side, we'll put a flat washer and then just start our nylon lock nut here. And this front one, you can see these tabs are a little bit wider, and that's so it tightens down into place once we're happy with its orientation. So to get this one started is a little tricky. You just want to pinch together the metal. And really for this point, it doesn't matter if we have that flat washer because we're going to be taking this off. We mostly just want this bracket to be in place. So this should be good. We'll go ahead and get the other side put on. So to get this mounted up, it is again going to be personal preference. The main thing we need to do is make sure we're not going to be in the way of anywhere where our rock guard's going to mount back up, and also here. There is some bend out on the pinch welds here. So I found a spot that I'm pretty happy with, and I have a chalk marker. You can use, I wouldn't recommend a paint marker because later I'm going to be marking on this outside. It's kind of up to you, but anything that can make a mark, grab that. And this should seat to where it pretty well sits nice and flush. So just kind of push it up and against the pinch weld. And while holding that in place, you're just going to mark on each side of the bracket. Just put a line on each of it there. And we're going to make 4 lines, so one on each side of each bracket. This is where I've marked mine out. Should look something like that. And at this point, you can take your bracket off. So just that hardware that we put on loosely. And we're going to be using this as our template. So as I mentioned before, it should sit up there pretty well to when you push it up. Everything's pretty tidy here. It's almost flush at the bottom. So we'll just get our marks all aligned. And we're going to be marking on this hole here. And then also at the top, there's going to be this hole. So get this all aligned and then mark that out as well. And that's something I'll point out too when choosing a spot to get this mounted up. You don't have a ton of different places you can put this, but do make sure that when you hold your bracket up that there's going to be metal to be able to drill into. So go ahead and get both of them marked out where we're going to be drilling. As far as drilling from the inside, you're probably not going to be able to do that. I have a right angle drill, and even with the drill bit in, I can't really get to this. So we are going to be drilling from the outside. So it's hard to translate this over to the other side, but what I'll do is on the bottom with my chalk marker, center that up with your mark. And then measuring up from the center of that to the bottom of our metal, it's just 1/2 inch. So on the other side, we can just measure up 1/2 inch following this center mark, and that's going to be where we can start drilling. So lining that up, just go ahead and mark right here. And I'll do the same on the other. Now to get a nice drill on this mark, I'm going to use a center punch, and this is just going to help align the drill bit. Do that on this one as well. And eventually we're going to be stepping up to a larger bit, but since you're really going through a few different sheets of metal here that's all pressed together, it is going to take a little bit to drill out. So I recommend getting a smaller bit. It's going to make it a little bit easier to get that hole started, and then we can go back and enlarge it. And once you have that drilled out for your pilot hole, you can go ahead with a 5/16 drill bit and enlarge it out. We'll go ahead and do the same thing on our other marked hole. And we also need to drill out the marks that we made up top, and this is going to be an 1/8 inch drill bit. So quite a bit smaller, but we'll go ahead, we'll center punch these and get these drilled out. We're gonna get ready to put our brackets up, and again, I'm gonna point out that there's two different types of hardware. So these are gonna be going through the side where we drilled through. I'm gonna use the longer ones. I don't really think it matters. It just makes it a little bit easier to be able to get your hardware started, and having a little bit more teeth for the nut to bite on, it's probably a good option to use these. So we'll get this in place. We're gonna take a flat washer. We'll slide it over our bolt. We'll pass this up. And then on the back side, we'll put a flat washer and then a nylon lock nut. And I'm just going to hand thread this on there for now. And we'll get both of these in place. And before we tighten that down, we're going to want to get our sheet metal screws put in place. There's going to be some longer ones and then some shorter ones. The shorter ones should be just fine. And I have a 5/16 bit that I'm going to be using with my impact. So we'll get this aligned with that hole we just drilled. And just tighten that up until it's snug. We'll get our other one in place as well. Get this tightened down. I just have a 1/2-inch socket and a 1/2-inch wrench holding our hardware in place as I tighten it. Now we can get our step and just slide this in. And then we'll get our hardware aligned just as we did before. So make sure you have your flat washer on the bolt head. Pass this through, and you may need to kind of move this around to get it aligned. And then on the back ends, make sure you're putting a flat washer before putting your nylon lock nut. And this one may be a little bit tight, so just if you need to, just kind of pinch on that bracket to get that started. Before we tighten these down, it's a good chance to really make sure it's exactly where you want it. And it really comes down to just kind of what your preference is. But to get this kind of a good point and make sure it's even with the other side, using a bubble level here, I'm just going to kind of level it out. And I think that's going to be the best option. But as you can tell, there's a decent amount of adjustment here. So it's really however much you want it. To tighten these down, you're going to want a 7/16 wrench and then a 7/16 socket, and then we'll go ahead and get these all snugged down. Now with everything tightened down, we can go ahead and get our rock slider put back on, and all we need to do is repeat the exact same steps on the other side of the Jeep. And that was a look at installation of the Carr Hoop II side steps on a 2020 Jeep Wrangler.